In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found No Proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 434 of our ongoing exploration of the immersive cosmos. And hello to all of you experiencing the Without Walls Festival this weekend, as I will be on Saturday, which will be the next time I get to talk to this week's guest, educator, performer, author, and artist Robert Farid Karimi, with whom I had a wonderful conversation that encompassed his work, making meaning, and the difference between the authentic and the genuine. I love talking with Robert, and I hope you get a kick out of it as well. A quick advisory: there's some strong language in this episode, but all of it is delivered with a light touch. Speaking of strong things with light touches, let's check in on the No Pro Patreon, where we are hovering at 10 backers away from the 450 mark, as if I was in a Roadrunner cartoon. This week, Amanda Myers joined and is keeping us from losing our toehold to this next plateau, and then smashing down in the canyon and in the Acme. Oh, wait, sorry. Remember, I will put down the bullhorn for a month and give this endless campaign a little rest, much needed rest, when we hit 450 backers. Look, not only do backers get the newsletter and access to our Discord, but they also get early access and discounts to events like the LA Immersive Invitational Showcase coming up on April 21st, which is only 10 tickets away from a sellout as I'm recording this, and the world premiere of the Broken Bone Bathtub documentary featuring a live Q&A with artist Siobhan O'Loughlin at 2-Bit Circus in LA on May 19th. Tickets for which are going on sale to backers next week. If you're not a backer yet, head on over to www.patreon.com/noproscenium and join up, and rest assured in the knowledge that you have found a way to shut me up. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers, Samuel Mystery, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Cameo Wood, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentes, Kurt Collins, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hands-On, Lecker LeCool, the Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. And hey, if you, like Siobhan, like others recently have done, want to hook up our audience with early access, special discounts, etc., hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com. We love doing that for our audience, and we love giving people signal boosts. And on that note, let's get into this week's interview. Right now, we have the pleasure of talking with educator, performer, author, and artist Robert Farid Karimi, whose work of late has included a series of interactive analog immersive game experiences involving topics such as community police relations and the illegal detention of Central American immigrant youth. Robert is the co-director of the public practice and generative play StudioLab and serves as assistant professor in the music, dance, and theater department at Arizona State University. We met Robert at Worlds in Play at ASU's Mix Center this past January, where they were running a performance/lecture dubbed The Mint Experience, which was drawn from the participatory satirical cooking show Cooking Con Karimi and Comrades. Robert, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Noah. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we had a good 10 minutes of pre-show, so
Secret tapes.
Yeah, we're warm. Oh, I wish it was taped in some parts of it anyway. But then again, I don't know if anyone wants to hear about Los Angeles living conditions. I always tell everyone before we roll, and I did this for you today, that this is just a conversation. And sometimes this is just the first real conversation I get to have with someone. Such is it today. And there's probably a million ways to get into this, but why don't we start with the Mint Experience? That's common ground for me. I have some orientation there, which was this performance lecture hybrid you were doing there at Worlds in Play. That was a bit of an experiment, was it not?
Yeah, it was. I was trying to find a way to talk about how do we create genuine relationship with each other, but also think about how to do. A lot of my work right now is dealing with playfulness and how to make anything blank playful. And a lot of my work has been about that idea, even with the cooking show, was how do you make health playful? How do you make difficult discussions about race playful? And the cooking show, when I created it, was about that. Because what was a conflict for my parents a long time ago, because I'm half Iranian and half Guatemalan, was how do you cook grandma's food when you can't translate the recipes? And
Oof.
so this idea of how my mom told me they did it was by tasting, because they didn't know the words in
Mm.
English. And so those kinds of interactive experiences, right, create new knowledge, create new wisdom. And when I did the Mint experience, it was in three parts, showing the different ways I make blank playful. Mint was this idea of getting the Mint experience was to get people to reconnect and retouch Mint, so that they think about how they eat, but in a playful way, without having to force them to go, this is how you should eat, everyone, but to really connect to a plant again and just smell it, taste it, and share a story with each other. Because to me, that's the origin of food and the origin of interactivity for me, is I create these experiences so that people can be together and connected. And then the second part of it was a piece from a new project I'm working on that is called High Five, which is about the first bisexual Black baseball player Glenn Burke, who invented the high five, and Harry Waters Jr., who is a performer from Back to the Future, who played Marvin Berry and is basically roughly the same age as Glenn, except Glenn died of AIDS and Harry continued to live on. And
Mm.
so we started thinking about high five. And I thought of high five as a ritual of survival. Hey, we made it past COVID. High five. Hey,
Mm.
we made it. We survived AIDS. High five. But not in a way to disrespect the dead, in a way that it both honors those who we've lost and honors life as well. And to me, I saw them as a string. The Mint gets you to honor food, right? And you and your connection. The high five gets you to honor you and your connection. And a lot of this was me to think of, get these designers, right, to think about interface, to think about how we interface with our players, how we interface with our participants. Because the final piece was a watermelon piñata where my uncle had just died and his favorite candy was a hard watermelon candy. But also, the significance of the watermelon within right now going on for a lot of people with the Palestinians and what's going on out there was this idea of there's a lot of death going on for all over the world. And where is the ritual? What are we going to use? Are we going to make a video game? What are we going to do to deal with the trauma people are going through? Can we create a playful way to deal with trauma? So showing the scaffold was going from the Mint to the high five to the watermelon piñata. And I don't know if you remember in the performance, I never mentioned, I let the symbol sit there. And I really I asked people to take the candies we gave them and to honor someone they had lost, rather than taking a candy out to put the candy back in. And then the audience asked for more candy because there were so many people who had lost someone and were feeling that death and feeling that loss. And I was like, whoa. Like I think 200 candies are in that piñata right now, which I still have at my house. So this was, on a theoretical level, because we can talk about it, we're outside of it, was really getting people to think about how simple it is to create relationship, how simple it is to get us to be playful with our grief, playful with our trauma, in a way that doesn't have to be like, hey, boys and girls, let's have some fun. Someone died today. Let's have some fun. In that
Yeah.
evil Stephen King it clown of way, which I had seen historically within theater performances that are like, oh, are you doing theater for health? Are you doing theater for community? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm doing and I'm doing something that gets people to talk to each other. The reason why I'm doing less, and I'm doing this for you, less proscenium style theater and performance is because for me, doing the cooking show for so many years, I noticed that I didn't have a way to make the audience complicit in our discussions.
Mm.
Game design and I don't say gamification, game design and participatory oriented work and getting people to make choices within the work gets them to be complicit. Oh, you're choosing to put that candy into that piñata? Got it. I have your grief now. And then when I did that, the little controversial part where I said, now does someone want to hit the piñata? I did that on purpose because I wanted to see, would the audience protect the piñata or would they leave it to me?
Yeah.
And the design was rough because it was our time. We didn't have as much time as I wanted.
And it
But
was an experiment. Yeah.
it was an experiment. But what caught me was that part jarred a lot of folks because they were like, "Whoa, that's unfair of you to make us do this." But it's the same thing to me, and I know the listeners can't imagine this, but this is why in my cooking show, even when we did it off Broadway, we had to wash dishes. We asked the audience to wash dishes at the end every night. Every night, it was this progressive cook that's trying to change the world through cooking. They had a good time. They ate, and I said, "Who's ready to wash the dishes?" Crickets. Crickets. And every night, who would want to wash the dishes? The female-facing audience members. I'm talking 10 years of this,
Oh my God.
without a doubt. And the male-facing folks would just stand or leave. And it was amazing to watch that moment happen. And these are the moments I seek when we're talking about this participatory work, not to shame anybody, but to get us to just be like, oh, you had a good time? Oh, everybody's cool? Don't forget, life is way more complicated. And I'm just doing it by a simple gesture. And that's what I was trying to do with the experiment, because I really wanted people to think about how we interface, how we can create connection, and how we can create relationship.
Well, in a moment like that, and I was having a particularly rough morning that morning, and so I was like actually like up out of the circle, up in the audience, actually hiding, doing a thing that I've long done as a theater kid, just hiding behind the back seat. So I was actually lying down in the aisle. There's no one else there. So, and actually, there was one person behind me. Latoya Peterson was behind me, working on her computer. But I was listening and I was watching and popping my head up at times and watching like the ripples of energy flow through the circle on stage, or the oblong on stage. It wasn't really a circle. And that moment of seeing if anyone was going to step forward and protect the piñata, right? And like kind of the tension that went in, and there was a nonverbal moment on that, and there was like kind of an uneasiness and an unsurety, and right now I'm thinking about that in context of like teaching, and the moment when you like first lay a test down to the students, and maybe they don't get anything right, and you sit back and go, I got to change my approach if I want them to do something, different, right? Like something in the design isn't getting, someone feeling able to stand up and be the one to kind of protect. But what was beautiful in that moment at the same time was everyone was so invested in, the piece of candy and in the layers of meaning you had put on top of it, the symbolism that was already pregnant in it because of the Watermelons Association in Gaza, and then your personal connection to your uncle, and that became a means by which I think, because I can't attest for other people's souls, but from observation of action, seemed to be people were given permission to put their own grief, their own energy through that common point, like take this symbol now belongs to you as well, and you can infuse it with energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a high dynamism there.
What really caught me that night, that day, was, I was really lucky. Um, at USC, I got to work with the former VP of Imagineering, and I don't know, I'm blanking on his name today, and I will remember by the end of what we talk. Who teaches at USC? He teaches immersive design and engagement, and I remember the inclusion of introducing the concept of waders, swimmers, and divers to me. And I've since, because I'm working on a new book, I'm since reimagined that word, that frame as like, I have 5 points now, but waders, allies, swimmers, and divers. And the idea, and there's another one called capturers, but that's we'll talk about that later. But what really caught me was how people who were not in the circle got something out of it. Like even Latoya, even though she was working on her computer, came all the way from the back to come to the circle. And it was like, to me, honoring the waiters, honoring people, because I knew I was dealing with some heavy subject matter on all 3 levels, how to let everyone in, and even those that are your allies that, they're not going to be involved, can still find a way to get connection to whatever's going on, because everyone's going to tell the story. Everyone however they make it in. And so it felt kind of, it was really hard for me personally, like emotionally, just taking in everyone's emotion. I had to like go to the parking lot and just like cry, because I was like, I felt a lot of people's grief. And what was really, I don't want to say hopeful. I'll say hopeful. Hopeful was, I truly, my own theory, my own idea, and all this time of work, I'm realizing like, aha, there is something in this game thing. There is something in this participatory thing. There is something in being together in this moment and making space for everyone, which to me is a cultural practice. It's not just a game theory or a Disney theory. To me, it's a cultural practice that I've been preaching in my own work for like 25 years. And to see now that there's a new language or a different language that comes from maybe a corporate space or a game space, to me, again, this is not gamifying. This is like honoring people and honoring because we are at best, we are creating an interactive experience. At worst, we're manipulating. My students remind me this in my class all the time. We're manipulating people. And I'm like, yes, you are. That's why you have to have honor and respect around it. You have to understand that you're creating a situation that might take someone out of their mind and body, and they might connect to an emotion that they haven't felt in 20 years. Someone might have dealt with a trauma that in putting that candy into the watermelon that I have no clue.
Yeah.
And I always want to honor anyone who works with me or anyone who is participating in that way, because I think the honor is the root of creating this connection. And this is what I was trying to get at with the whole experiment. Honor the food, honor each other with the hands, honor our memory, because in the end, it's all, to me, it's all intertwined.
Yeah. There's a couple of things you said over the course of this. Right back to talking about your parents having to taste the food in order, because like they didn't have the English words to describe like the tasting notes. And it struck me there that the idea of interactive as being an alternate form of translation, right? Like at all times, I'm someone who like has long, I like stories. And then there was this wave of time when like everything was storytelling, right? Like particularly you're in LA and it's like storytelling, advertising, storytelling, to the point where it started to make storytelling feel kind of like the way, like gamification. Oh, we're just going to sprinkle some story. We're going to sprinkle some game. Like, it's the universal solvent. And underneath it all, I'm like, it's not about story. It's about meaning. It's something meaningful. And two people may come to a moment in time, come to an accident, see things from different perspectives and draw different meanings from it, right? Like we know that's something true. I mean, that's what Rashomon's all about, right? Like trying to teach us, like there's multiple perspectives on something. And this idea of, by making people complicit, by giving them agency, we're able to offer them the chance to participate in this thing in an existential way, in a meaning making way. And then what happens when you put your meaning on something, they put their meaning on something, and you find the point of connection, right? There's shared meaning in between. That's kind of a third thing, that's the holographic reality that exists between two people's meanings, right?
Right. And I think I wrote down a lot of things when you were speaking. I mean, yes, thank you. And I think it's also the relational. I
Yeah.
think the relational is how we build knowledge and wisdom. When my
Mm.
parents didn't know the words of the English words for the ingredient they were looking for, like there's one word, my mom makes a soup and it's whiskil in Guatemalan Spanish. It's chayote in Mexican Spanish. And I went through every Mexican grocery store in LA looking for this thing. And I'm like, I don't see this whiskil, mom. And she's like, oh, it's chayote. Out of the relational builds this knowledge and wisdom, builds this vocabulary, builds this thing, a world builds a world kind of thing,
A
um,
world builds a world.
a
That just
world
struck me.
built a world builds a world. And I at heart, where this comes from, I at heart am a poet. That's what I started as. I did spoken word. And this to me, making these worlds, making these systems, to me is like, it's like Gwendolyn Brooks, Mary is a rose in a whiskey glass. That gives you an image. Well, when I put a 20-sided die with with 3 characters, boom, I have a poem there. If I put a piece of mint in your hand and ask you to tell a story to someone, boom, I've done the same thing. Poet creates poet, story creates story, system creates system. And those interactions are important. I mean, it's why people are still going to church. Why
Mm.
people are reading a book. They want to encounter something. They want to connect to something that's going to spark something else. They want
Yeah.
something beyond themselves. But the other thing I wanted to say, and I wanted to add to what you just said, is this. I've been struggling with that concept of agency. And I always have to remind myself, my students, anybody I work with, that audiences are giving us their agency. They always have agency. They come in, and when we offer consent, offer systems of consent to say, hey, can we move forward with this? Can we do this? We honor their agency because they can choose. I used to teach high school. I used to tell my students, you know that your body makes money for the teachers. So if your body doesn't show up to this classroom, we don't get paid. You're the person we should be working for. So if all of you decided, the senior class decided today to not come to class for the next month, people be scrambling. People won't know what to do. You have the choice. This is your education. Well, the same thing when we make these participatory environments. I choose to go to Meow Wolf. I choose to go in. I give them my money. I take their card. I do everything. And I can walk out in 30 seconds. Say, I lost my $50 and I move on. These are the things I think about because, again, honoring the individual. If the system I create is the system I want politically. So if I create a system that honors my player and teaches them how to honor themselves, even though it might be a difficult thing I'm doing, that at root they're coming back to honoring themselves, then boom, they
Yeah.
go to the next thing. And I learned this. I made my thesis project that ended up being the last big thing I did in Los Angeles was in 2019 at USC for the Voices and Visions program, and I created Swimming Pool Party, and that was a 2-level interactive game experience where you had to solve puzzles to get the most difficult swimmer in the person who does not like to swim. You have to get them in the pool so they can have their first lesson. And the whole world is based upon a future where a certain president has kept his job for the next 50, 60 years. And they divide the world between swimmers and non-swimmers. And the non-swimmers, that basically people of color, usually, or at-risk communities that don't know how to swim right now, that are most likely to drown, are divided between those that can swim, and they are called floaters and rocks. And you enter into the secret world of the Institute of Rebellious Swimming, IRS, because all the non-swimmers are forced to work at the IRS because nobody ever wants to work there anymore. And you walked in to the PE building, and I was the artist in resident at the PE department, because this all came from I didn't know how to swim. It was my greatest fear in life. I had drowned at the age of 3 in front of my mother. It caused her trauma. It caused me trauma. And I discovered, because my previous 10, 11 years of work had been focused on type 2 diabetes with my cooking show, and dealing with disrupting health messaging through humor and interactive experiences, right? The swimming pool party was based, while I was researching it, I found out that the same communities that are at risk for type 2 diabetes in the United States, coincidentally, are most likely to drown in America. And one of the biggest reasons why these communities don't learn how to swim is because the mothers usually don't know how to swim, and they're afraid to take their kids swimming. Now, why is that important to all of us? Because my mother doesn't know how to swim. My Mayan grandmother doesn't know how to swim. My Mayan great-grandmother, but yet, now we go back, all Mayans knew how to swim. What happened? What happened that these women don't know how to swim in the last 150 years? What happened?
Yeah.
Colonialism? I don't know. So this piece was an interactive puzzle. Now, the first hardest part was, I made so many mistakes because it was in a building with early 20th century building with a bomb shelter. I made so many mistakes, especially with accessibility, bad elevator, all these things. But what could I do to honor people, to get them to do these crazy things I asked? And a lot of it was just, meeting them where they were, being very patient with them. You didn't want to do something, you didn't have to do it. You could do it in a group. All these things I had to learn for this project, because the goal was to help me take on my greatest fear, which was swim the 9 feet part of the pool all the way to the 4 for the first time in my life. And so I had done all these lessons. It was like a whole domino effect. And what's so crazy is 200 people did it. They did the puzzles,
Wow.
They followed, and they created a whole ceremony to help me swim for the first time. And the tech, just to give you an example of how real this was, the night before in the tech, the lifeguards, the space, my other performers realized I really didn't know how to swim because I almost drowned during the tech. Because it was like my first time. I had done these lessons, but it still was my first time. And to be real, to the moment, I didn't want to do the whole length, but I had never really succeeded at it. So it was I even had a water doula, and it was really fascinating to listen, to think that everybody thought this was fake. And you could hear it in the video. And then there's a moment where they start cheering me on because they realized, because I trip up for real while I'm trying to swim. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is real. Oh my God, we're really helping him. Come on, do it. Come on. And to me, wouldn't it be great if we all could have an honor or ceremony whenever we take on our greatest fear?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be wouldn't that be
great?
No,
say fucking. It's cool.
Okay, fucking. Wouldn't it be great if we could do that? To me, that's the role of immersive. That's the role of interactivity, is to get people to think of the possibility, but honoring them. I did my darndest to do that.
When I was in high school, I got turned on to the mythopoetic cycles, and I got like really into like Joseph Campbell and everything because I was a Star Wars kid, and my high school English teacher was also my psychology teacher and was like into Jung and into Campbell and everything like that. And I for a while was obsessed with the idea that what was missing in this culture was as America, not as, you know, the cultures that make up America, because that's a whole other thing, but was the idea of we don't have initiation rites in America. We don't have, you know, these ordeals that we go through, or, you know, these points that mark, you know, from one stage of life to another. And one of the things that I've found in certain categories of immersive experiences is that it provides that for people. It provides these moments to mark transformation, or to let them practice at going from one stage to another. And it's not something, you know, that everyone goes and chases. And often I feel that, quite properly, you know, that's being put upon this work by the audience. They're bringing that meaning to it, right? They're marking these transformations themselves, and it's the artists making space for that to be a possibility for them. I'm always a little more worried when an artist sets out and says like, I'm going to transform you, you know. It's like, whoa, that's, hello guru, like what goal do you have here? But knowing that there's a responsibility, because someone may be having that moment, like you were talking about earlier, like someone may be bringing something, opening up an emotion that they haven't had for 20 years, you know, suddenly reckoning with something. And, you know, if you're doing your job as a maker of this stuff, you got to be ready to catch that. You got to be ready to make space for that.
Right. And I think the final piece of the party was an actual party. So if I
Yeah.
make it to the end, a samba band played, a live samba band in the gym started playing and led people to a party upstairs with two DJs, inflatable unicorn, inflatable square with food and everything to celebrate their journey, to honor them for their participation, their participation within my ritual. Because I hungered for that. I hungered to go to rituals where someone like gave me gratitude for going through the emotional journey they took me through, especially in the performance art world. Like I had come from that in the 90s, and I had learned so much about ritual and ceremony and reconnecting to my body and embodied practice. But I kept asking myself, okay, can we get a little playful? Can we release? I grew up with these stand-up comics that were like combining, but and really influenced my art practice. That were making me laugh about very serious things. Paul Mooney, Richard Pryor, Whoopi Goldberg, and I was just like, this is great because they gave me release. Okay, how can we give release to our audience? How can we make them laugh and be a part of something because they just went through a lot? And for me, that's important to me. Is how do I build that? That's part of what happened with Swimming Pool Party was, and having that 2 years to do it and think about was, I'm going to take you through something difficult. We're going to ease you through, and you did it. Great. Now let's party. And I think that's constantly what I'm thinking about because I understand what I'm taking them through. I get it. I've been a part of these participatory things as well. Child of Jim Jones and Jonestown, where this can go real bad real quick. And I'm a real skeptic to participatory work. Like when I first saw oh gosh, what's that? The Macbeth. Why am I forgetting? I'm forgetting simple things today. Oh, I just remembered the name of the person I taught with at USC, Joe Garlington. There we go. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Sleep No More. When I first stopped Sleep No More, I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know. Just because, not that it's not a great work, it's just who I am. I'm always nervous when someone says they're going to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, because of agency, because I'm volunteering to give myself to you, give my mind to a certain degree, give you my being. And I've really got to be respectful to that. And sometimes these makers are not. respectful to my being, but also are kind of asking me to be mindless a bit. And I won't let that one go. I won't, and I hope my audience members don't either. Because if they, like, even at the experiment, if someone had a critical moment, hey, that's part of what this is. Are you going to say my parents, when they were deciding on ingredients, weren't arguing? No, that's not the right one. Of course not. So I'm never asking my audience for consent to be mindless, that or lack of consciousness. But I'm asking more how our interaction, our encounter can build upon what they're doing. And sometimes that does require, right, some, letting go of belief a little bit, letting go and trusting and being vulnerable. Because in the end, I think with the interactive work, when it's at its best for me, and the participatory work is, it's helping us in the practice of being vulnerable with each other, in spaces with each other, because to me, that is still the most difficult thing to do, or be allowed to do, especially in our professional settings, in our institutions, because so much of that vulnerability is institutionalized and compressed or banned. Even telling someone talking about grief at work, right? Just a simple topic of that. Who you tell your boss? Do you not? Do you, or if someone comes up to you, yeah, someone died too. And it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a hug. I wanted something deeper than that. And how do you create the practice of this vulnerability? How do you get the practice of this vulnerability to talk about diabetes, to talk about how to be healthy with each other? I think those are the, excuse me. I think those are the things that makers need to think about. And at least that's the vein of work that I'm going towards, because even when I'm making a video game, which I did last year, I'm making a video game to get people to think about how to go from killing to protection. Because to me, this is the type of thing that I'm after. And I'll explain the game real quick. The game was called Grandma Invaders. And
what a name. What a name.
Well, the idea comes from, I was doing a residency at Shangri-La Islamic Museum of Art and Design that is supported, funded by the Duke Foundation. It is Doris Duke's former museum with all this Islamic art, and I was the artist in resident last summer. And I decided to make this residency called Game Recognize Game. Now, the idea comes from hip hop. All of you that, wait a minute, that's game. Yes, Game Recognize Game is a term from hip hop where you're recognizing someone as kin, so to speak. Like, Game Recognize Game, hustler recognizes hustler, I see you, I see what you're up to. But in my instance, what I was doing was I was taking games to get us to be reconnected to ourselves as kin. Could I create games to get us to see the family within ourselves, and also critique this space, which is full of art, Muslim art that comes from some suspect places as well at the same time. So I created 5 experiences. One being my Cards Against Humanity expansion set called Cards Against Iranians, Syrians, ... The drag queen Iranian version, where it's the deck, a black deck that disrupts the white cards of Cards Against Humanity, and I have local guests play people that usually they are from the countries of the Muslim ban, and challenge them to talk shit about those countries in front of Iranians, Syrians, and all that stuff. And a lot of folks thought I was just trying to make some expansion thing for Amazon. But what was really important to me was, again, getting everybody a little uncomfortable. And I kept the game system a little broken because I have this other concept, which you could talk about later, called broken games, which is I keep the game a little broken so people can talk shit about the game while they talk shit about the system. And so this event, this expansion, this exhibit was all filled with my broken game. So this broken game was one, but the other one was Grandma Invaders. And Grandma Invaders is, and this is, again, coincidence, I don't think it was planned. In 1978, Space Invaders was created. And in 1978, the United States changed its relationship with Iran. And that coincidence created me, the little video game player that I was in the 70s, and playing Space Invaders, and also being half Iranian, getting my ass kicked for being Iranian during the Iranian hostage crisis. And so I decided to see if I could mess with the mechanic of Grandma Invaders and make an arcade inside, a LAN arcade, LAN, right? A LAN arcade inside of the museum. In the Qajar room, which is the last royalty of Iran. Doris Duke had all this work from that period, and create this thing with Grandma Invaders. And Grandma Invaders had two levels. Level one was the regular, you shoot at things, and you would shoot at the regular, space things. You would shoot at women. I had these women avatars I designed. You would shoot at Iranian women. You would shoot at water because Hawaiians are trying to protect the water that has been ruined by the Navy. You would shoot at Hawaiian land. You would shoot. So I had all these different levels of destruction, right? Grandma doesn't let you play. Oh, you can also shoot at Grandma. Grandma, the avatar of Grandma comes in real big and doesn't let you play too long and kill things, and disrupts you and takes you and says, come on, try and shoot me. But you can never win. You can't beat Grandma. And she throws sandals at you. And Grandma then takes you into the protection level. And there she teaches you using the actual dramatic and formal elements of Space Invaders, right? The little, each one of those things. And we flip it. And we put this idea of you're using it to protect those same things you were shooting. And so now the player no longer has the cannon. The player now has the bunkers and the shields and is learning how to protect these things, the water, the land, Iranian women, and Grandma. And so these are the types of flips that I do. And then while people are playing, they get to talk. I have a host, a performance host in there teaching them how to play and all this stuff. And then they get to leave me notes and things they've learned and how, and supposedly they think it's a play test, but in fact, it's getting them to feel what it's like to protect and how Grandma teaches them how to protect their land. And this to me is the kind of interactivity, kind of immersion, kind of going back to the relational, creating wisdom, creating feeling, and creating connection. Because this is truly my artistry, but also like even when I'm talking as a consultant to people, if we're not in this industry to create connection, we're dealing with humans now. Why are we here? And for me, this Grandma Invaders and the Cards Against were getting me to you should have, if you were in either room, people are laughing. People are like, oh my God, what, Grandma, what? Or Cards Against, these two Iranian women were like talking shit. Go ahead. What are Iranians like? Iranians be like, what? Huh? Go ahead, say it. And people were laughing. People were having a good time, because how are we going to cross over into understanding if we don't get into these difficult conversations? If we don't feel a little pain, if we don't have a little obstacle, this type of work, participatory and game work, allows us in a safe, or I should say, in a consensual environment. Got it? See, a consensual environment to do that. And that's what I just wanted to say.
Yeah. No, I also like that reframing from safe, from the taught, safe space to a consensual environment. Because I think that's one of the things about the concept of a safe space that got a little bit lost was, the idea was this was a space that was safe for us to bare our souls, to put something difficult on the table, to admit that we were wrong or fucked up, or and get it out, exteriorized in conversation. And then it starts to, and a lot of places are still using it that way, but then anything that hits the internet gets stripped down, flattened out to like the simplest level of meaning, and it gets misconstrued as the idea of, oh, this is a space where nothing happens, right? And it's safe in that way. There are no hard edges here. We've filed off all the edges, as opposed to here's a room we can play with knives, and we're going to have some level of forgiveness. And it makes me think of, like, Meisner technique, where you throw two actors onto a stage and you have them just observe, and then it can get brutal really quickly, but you leave it there, and you say, like, that's that. And if you ever come back to it, I didn't do Meisner until well after any of my acting training. And I was just like auditing, sitting in on a class, and I was blown away by it and was like, why was that not given to me by my professors? Like, because none of them like Meisner technique is why they were interested in other aspects. But I was just floored by this idea of being able to get to the raw very quickly, but then having to recognize that you have to leave it there and you cannot bring it back, and you have to treat what happened there in that moment as that moment. And there's that can anything can be abused, that technique can be driven in such a way that could, like, injure folks, but held rightly and treated with respect, it can also be a technique that builds both resilience and allows real moments to happen on a stage, or real moments to happen inside of a piece for participants. Although when we're inviting the uninitiated into these experiences, right? I think it's one of the reasons why there's so much emphasis put on onboarding, is that you're initiating people into the mechanics, into the social norms, and into how to take care of each other in the context of the event that you're doing, so that people can experiment with things that are difficult and rough, and get down into something real without it being done maliciously, without it being as the creator's power trip, or an excuse for someone to get sociopathic with everyone in the room and be like, well, it was just a game, like that. That's a hard thing. It's difficult to hold, right?
Yep.
In any game, in any context, in any time when you're giving people permission to step outside their norm, it's to hold a space open like that, and do it with care, and do it in a way that can challenge people, but not have someone come out bleeding, literally or figuratively. Not an easy task, but a worthy task, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as you were talking about Meisner, you reminded me about, you know, I was working with, like, the performance artist Guillermo Gomez Pena for a while, and working with Laurie Carlos, other various performance artists, and it got me thinking about, um, when I went into improv in Second City, and I said, "Whoa, this is the same." And Meisner is like, "Oh wow, look at all these things that get to the vulnerable, get to the raw," as you said. And I think I was like, I'm glad I got them in my late 20s and 30s. But now, as I'm older, I'm now asking myself, and I got this idea from my former high school English teacher, Jeff Hofford, with this idea of, how do we teach a 17-year-old emotional literacy? How do we, before
Ugh.
we even get to Meisner, before we get to performance art, before we get to improv, how do we teach emotional literacy to a 16-year-old that's depressed, that's going
Mm.
through all these things? How do we get them, when they show up in our college at freshman year, how do we get them to embody and enact and really, deal with these things? I mean, even a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old, a 90-year-old. My stepfather every day says, "You don't want to get old, because it's the hardest thing you ever do in your life." And I think about that, because emotional literacy, the emotions of aging, the emotions of being a teenager, rather than going, you're a teenager, you'll get over it, blah, and going, wait a minute, rather than having a psych therapist and all these various, before we even get to the medical world, where are the spaces within our communities, within our cultures, where
Yeah.
people can have this discussion about emotional literacy. If we're going to teach people how to read, why can't we read emotions? Why can't we learn how to read those things as well? Because Mary is a rose in a whiskey glass elicits an emotion. Mary is a rose in a whiskey glass. This is a line from Gwendolyn Brooks, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
totally stealing this line from her poem, The Blackstone Rangers. And Mary is a rose in a whiskey glass. That's emotional. We can start talking. I mean, I ask students, what do they see? And they're like, oh, she's an alcoholic. Oh, what are those emotions? How did you know that? 16-year-old, 15-year-old. And why that's important to us, the immersive makers, experienced strategists, experienced designers, why that's important to us, because we're asking audiences to go through an emotional journey. And where is that space to have that conversation of emotional literacy? It's not in the acting classes, I'll tell you that much. I mean, we're asking them to do it. So where is it? It's not in the business room. Okay, psychology, where are we going to have that talk? And I think that talk can start in some of the immersive experiences we're creating and in the games we're making. Because I know for example, Journey is, I mean, I went through so many emotions when I first played that game. What Stanley Parable. Whoa. Whoa. So many emotions. And so are they. So are they. You know, I teach a dramatic writing class and I talk to them about game design. And I talk to them about the games they play and how the stories they immerse themselves in create the emotions they're feeling. And I said, that's what a good storyteller does in the end. No matter what genre you're using, no matter what media, you're making us feel some emotions. So why isn't there a place, to talk about Shel Silverstein, or I don't know, Roald Dahl, or wherever we're talking about it, through literature or through games? How do we have that emotional literacy conversation, so that when they get to Meisner, when they get to Sleep No More, when they get to Meow Wolf, when they get to anything that we're making, even Nintendo making a big, what did my friend tell me that he was part of? The big, I guess PS2, PS3, one of them. Oh no, Wii. It was Wii. They took over some stadium and got people to immerse themselves. The audience can have an emotional literacy so that they can have a conversation to know, whoa, we're being sold, or whoa, this is kind of cool, rather than just go, oh, that's neat, and walk away.
A thing I find myself thinking about sometimes is that, the human brain works on, what the neuroscientists or whatever call heuristics, and what we might just call shortcuts, right? We have these shortcuts to meaning. Like, that's a heuristic, right? We have this way of, you see someone dressed a certain way, you have a stereotype of them, but you're also picking up on certain patterns, certain clues. Like, I'm thinking of, someone who might be signaling that they're of a particular political faction, right? Then we have this whole other set of connotations about, well, what that person is and who they are. And it might not be entirely right, but it probably isn't entirely wrong either. And stories, offer us a direct way of those types of symbols, of thinking in that way. You think of Chewbacca from Star Wars, and you have a very specific image, not just of the silhouette of the character and what they do and what they look like, but what they mean, right? All the meaning that gets associated, and the idea of a loyal friend, like the ultimate ride or die, right? Like your man's best friend, because he's also based on a dog, right? But like all those connotations are there, and in the snap of a fingers, like the simple, you see the outline, like this is what that means. And part of that's because the way we need to be able to make those split second decisions in order to survive, right? Is that car coming at me or not? Is that dinosaur chasing me or not? Right? You got to make the choice now. There's no other time. And we can get, there's things that happen where we get caught up in that and get it wrong. But it's such a powerful part of who we are. And the thing about experiential work is that is almost the medium that we're playing with. We're playing with the social contract. We're playing with people's heuristics. We're getting you to apply the way you see the world to the circumstances in front of you, either through puzzle solving or through navigating the social dynamics, and start to understand the characters that you meet, both as individuals and as these symbols that point to something larger. And in that moment, we're playing with heuristics. We're getting people to understand on a visceral way something through those means. And then when we step back and talk about designing and talk about working with this, then we're getting people to think about those mechanisms, think about the social systems that undergird, the story that's been put there, think about the relationships that have been put into play, think about the 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 psychological dynamics that are running. And that's definitely a higher order of difficulty. But one of the things that excites me as this work goes from being something that is done by a small few, or is done specifically as corporate events or as activations or as, experiential marketing, and starts to leak out and become cultural practice, folk practice, something that anyone can pick up and do, then folks can start to understand the relationship between working in this fashion and the way it applies to the way our culture, the default modes of our culture, the hidden assumptions of our culture, and that it is in dialogue with that. Oh boy, that sounds like a lot of word salad to me. But
No. It wasn't.
coffee's running out. The coffee's running out.
No. It wasn't word salad. It was quite a banquet. Thank you. I almost did the Chewbacca sound behind you. No, I strongly, I feel really connected to you. I was nodding a lot while you were talking, because I see the, what's the best, it's really like, it's not a word salad, because I think, to me, it's about connecting back, like you said. It's about the now, connecting back to the cultural practices of the past. It's honoring those cultural practices. It's honoring those rituals. It's understanding that this current immersive moment, granted, it's all these different corporations, all these different things going on. This immersive moment is part of a legacy, of a historical human legacy. And the more we get into that, the more we connect with that, I think the more we get stronger as makers, as beings, as artists, but as audience members. When you said Chewbacca, it just reminded me of what I talk about, this idea of this idea of getting out of the non-binary of emotion, of fight or flight, getting out of the non-binary of the pew pew of the binary, the binary of fight or flight, or the binary of pew pew, kill kill, kill kill, make points, and getting to the non-binary, the gradient of emotion, the gradient of malleability of, I love Chewbacca. Now I get to take Chewbacca home inside my memory, inside my heart, and it gets to become mine. And maybe Chewbacca becomes my uncle, Chewie, and I start thinking of fan fiction, or I start thinking of something else. And this moment, this encounter with this film, with this literature, with this immersive experience, gets me to reimagine myself, and now I get to take something, I get to make something. I get to do what the artist did. The artist did the best thing I feel that artists can do, is get people to remember that they can make as well. Might not be the same thing, might not be whatever, but they get to take the world and do something with it. They're not just mindless, take it in. You're just a bank to deposit and withdraw. And a lot of this comes from my old long time ago thinking about how we create connection. Taking us a little back, is I studied this guy Martin Buber, who had a book called Ak Undu, or Yo Itu, I and thou, because we don't have a familiar you. And he's a Jewish theologian who was trying to figure out, what does the spirit look, what's man's relationship to God, to the spirit, and to the ethereal. And I've never lost that book in my mind, because um, I'm just going to really summarize it really quickly. The idea was that you have an I-it relationship, where imagine you in a tree, you have an objective view, and you can kill the tree. And then an I-thou, tu-iyo relationship with the tree, where you have a more subjective, you find you're in a relationship with it, you're less likely to kill the tree because you can see the tree inside of you, kind of thing. And Buber said that this is an alternative experience, like this idea we go between I it and I thou constantly. It's never just I it to I thou, because we're constantly objectifying, subjectifying, constantly, as you said, worried about crossing the street. And that alternation to me is like a non-binary. I'm not one or the other. I could be both at the same time, but I'm still constantly seeking the ethereal beyond my physical. Yeah. And so for me, this idea is how art, or these immersive experiences, any experience that we encounter, gets us into that ethereal space to help us with the objective space, or vice versa, or even coming to the understanding of that. Because of Chewbacca, I understand I thou. Because of Luke Skywalker, I understand I thou. I understand my grandmother now and her Mayan teachings. I understand why my Iranian grandmother, all she could say in English was I love you, and how that meant 5 million things. Those kinds of things is why we do this stuff, and why we need this stuff, and why we hold on to this stuff beyond its making. And this is why I do what I do. And this is where, when I'm thinking about how we make experiences, I am not going after the authentic. I'm going after the genuine.
I'm so glad you hit there, because I want to. We're going to dismount on this, because this was the only other written question or prompt I had, was the thing you said at Mint Experience about this. I'm stopping everyone. Focus up, everybody. Focus on what he's saying right now. This authentic and genuine thing. Go for it.
Well, this came from, people would tell me, when I'm doing the cooking show, they would ask, is this an authentic Iranian recipe? And I'd be like, my Guatemalan mother made all my Iranian food. Like the Iranians, when they first met me in LA, they were like, oh, you've never had Persian food. Oh, you've been made by your mother? Oh, like really looking down, like my mother was the maid or something, right? No offense to Persians in LA, but that's what happened. So I would be like, yeah, because my mom's food's like brighter and like has more lemon and has a little bit more of that. I mean, her eggplant stew, Koresh Badamjan, I challenge Bobby Flay. I challenge everybody. It's not authentic, because authentic, when everyone says, oh, I'm going to give you an authentic experience of blah, 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 the etymology of authentic is authored. And I had a hard time with that, because I didn't want to keep making authored experiences. I realized I was after genuine experiences. And genuine, the etymology of genuine is jinn, the third beings of Islam. And it's the idea that when we're seeking something genuine, in my mind, we're seeking a magic. We're seeking something beyond ourselves that can't be explained. I mean, the third being of Islam, the jinn, are in the Quran. You can't refute them when you are in a Muslim country, but it gets complicated if you were to say, I just channeled a jinn. That's complicated. But I'm not here to get into jinn with you right now. I'm getting into the concept of why I love that jinn, something from my past, something from my heritage, helps me explain what I'm after, which is the genuine. That one thing, that third being, that third experience, that third encounter, that authentic will never do. Authentic will be super authored. So if someone says they have authentic Iranian food, that's good. I'm glad they do. They need that because they need to have a stamp, right? I'm an author. I need to have it stamped for the objective world. But the genuine is more subjective. It's more connected to that I and now, that inner relationship, that encounter of why people go to church every Sunday for some folks, or why people even come to our experiences. They're seeking that vulnerable. They're seeking that put the candy in the piñata to deal with their trauma. They don't know why. They don't know why it feels healing. But to them, maybe that's a genuine moment. And those, just like I was saying earlier, when people were clapping for me when I was swimming, I mean, that for me is what I'm after, because I can't replicate it. I can never replicate that swimming pool party show. I can't. I mean, it happened, and only we witnessed it. Only we experienced it. Only we encountered it. And thank goodness we did, because every genuine experience we have then becomes, in my thought, and I could be wrong, you can tell me after I finish this thought, that's Chewbacca. That's why, for me, why Star Wars, 1977 came out. Star Wars was that thing. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like, that was the thing that sparked me. And E.T., not as much. And I was young. No offense, Steven Spielberg, but why and I'm not saying one was authentic or whatever, but the other thing I love about the genuine is it's personal. I can't tell you how to be what's genuine for you as for me, but if I make a space that's open to the genuine, open to you to have the genuine experience, then for me, I did my job. And I think even Disney and Apple and all those folks understand this, because back in the day when the Apple Genius, prior to what it is now, but back in the day, Apple Genius used to be the place where you could just hang out with people on a Sunday afternoon and talk Apple. And I was just like, wow, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. I love this. This is so cool. We get to talk shop about Apple and with these mechanics. And I'm like, this is great. Apple, you're smart. It turned into something else. That's up to them. But part of the spirit of what I feel they're after is the genuine feeling I had when someone said, hey, you know where that sound setting is too? Well, let me show you another sound setting. Let me show you how to open your Centris 650, your PowerBook, 3G. You should get the clamshell because of that. And that, again, the wisdom sharing. In Spanish, it's tú eres mi otro yo. In Lakesh, it comes from in Lakesh, a Nahuatl term for tú eres mi otro yo, you are my other I. And I feel that the genuine is the connection to that inner relationship that Buber's talking about. And the genuine is the expression of tú eres mi otro yo, you are my other I. And that moment that we have that experience together, no matter, I'm not saying the genuine is, I could genuinely feel sad. I could genuinely feel hatred. I could genuinely feel a lot of various things, but it's truly mine. And you can design to make a space open to that genuine. And to me, and I know people want, I'd love to debate people publicly this. We could have a whole talk about this, but the author, to me, that never takes me, the authentic never takes me to the place where the genuine does. The authentic almost feels like it's preaching to me or telling me how I have to be within the system in order to feel the way the author wants me to feel. The genuine doesn't ask me for that. The genuine, when I get to it, puts me in a space where I'm like, oh shit, do I want to still be here? Okay, I'll feel this for the moment. I'll do this for the moment. And everything I'm saying, and I own up to this. I'm complicit in my own. It's ever changing about this authentic and genuine, because one of the things I want to be clear about, I'm not trying to make a religion out of this. I am literally trying to come to an understanding in a way that Buber is, in a way that other people are. Even, I can never say his name, the person who, Mikali, the person who, conceptualized flow.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Oh
just
yeah, can't say same
yeah.
either.
I'm just trying to understand how to get to that genuine. And to me, for all you math heads, it's the limit of x as it approaches, zero with genuine over zero inside the derivative, and genuine over x. Sorry, so it's limit to the x as it approaches zero, genuine over x, because I'm still trying to get to the approximate moment of it, and it's gone. Get to it, and it's gone. And that's why, to quantify the genuine, to create a very calcified definition of it, to me, at that moment, that's when it becomes authentic. And that's, to me, when it
Mm.
loses um, the 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 breath, the aha, the duende. See, I'm doing word salad too. The duende, the that's Lorca's term of all of this, because I I think about it ever since I was little, like what jinn were, and seeing the movies tell me that jinn are all demons and all this stuff, and then when I'm getting older, finding out it's a much more complicated story. It's just like the word genuine to me, like someone telling me this is what you should do. But no, genuine's not a demon. Genuine's not what they tell you in the movies. Genuine's a lot more varied, a lot more non-binary, and fluid. And that's what I'm after. That's what I'm after, to even help people when they make their experiences, be it a city, be it a restaurant, be it like I help someone with a homeless project, like anything that they're doing. If I can help with that, because again, I'm building the worlds that I want to make, and I want to be helpful with or spark, I should say, the wisdom exchange. And to me, the wisdom exchange comes from the simple act of, I'm buying beans in Chile, Santiago, Chile. I'm buying pinto beans. I am by myself, because most towns, if I stay somewhere for a long time, I have these beans. And the genuine comes from an older woman, probably in her 80s, comes up to me and says, Perdón, ¿cómo cocinas este frijol? They don't say frijol, they use a different word, but I think it's potos or portos. And I looked at her and I said, she's asking me, how do you cook the beans? And I said, why? What's wrong? She's like, oh, siempre están duros. And I go, oh, they're always hard? Oh, well, I use this thing, and I take it out of my bag. I use this thing called kombu. It's a seaweed with some salt, and I put it in the last 20 minutes. ¿Quieres? I go, ¿quieres? Would you like some? Oh, sí, gracias. Yeah, tienes que poner el sal, después. It's like, oh, put the salt afterwards. And that moment really did happen to me. And that is genuine. And then she gave me advice on where to get good wine. And we did a wisdom exchange, which I thought was quite fair, $5 wine. Mm-hmm. And that's an interactive experience. Happened we're at the checkout. And weirdly, it was designed for that to happen, right? That's what we offer in the immersive world. And those genuine things are something I'm constantly seeking, because the authentic has its role, but I'm seeking how to get us more genuine experiences.
That is a perfect place for us to dismount this episode. Robert, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next time we get to talk, which will be around WoW. And I will drop a whole bunch of links in the show notes, both to your work and your site, and to some of the stuff that came up today. I was taking notes as we went, and looking forward to the next time we get to do this.
And thank you, Noah. Thank you for making this space for all of us, and for being a leader in this space. Oh. You've been a light and a beacon. So I'm very grateful to just even have a conversation today. So thank you.
Oh, no, the pleasure was definitely all mine. Once again, I want to thank Robert for being our guest on the show this week. Check the show notes to see what he is up to as you're listening to this, because, podcasts are eternal. That's what they tell me. Or at least that's what they charge us money every month for, for them to be. I'm recording this on Friday morning, after editing it on Thursday night. How does that work? No, editing the last one. I should edit this part. The coffee is starting to work at long last. A reference to a take you will no longer hear, because, one of the opening takes, I gotta admit, it was probably more fun than the one you got, but it just had too many errors. There was this bit where I hit the microphone with my glasses, and I made a bit out of it, and then I listened to it, and I was like, no, that's annoying. So there, I spared you. There is a modicum of professionalism here at NoPro. I mean, look, we get what we pay for. We run No Proscenium on $3,000 a month. We get what we pay for. So this is not a deeper Patreon pitch, but just I want you all to realize what it is going on here. Maybe I should start using that instead of the number of backers as the metric. I'll switch back to that the next time we do the next goal we have. Maybe that would shock everybody. Anyway, this wasn't supposed to turn in clinic on this. I was supposed to talk about cheery things. I noted two of the things that are happening in the next month and change at the start of this, which was the Invitational, which is really coming together. Graham and I were just on site at the Nocturne Theater yesterday, kind of figuring out where the rooms and the festival flow was going to go, how all that's working, and we're really excited about the situation this year, and with all the teams that are involved, which I think, have I told you all the team? I mean, look, you can go on to this website that we're always talking about right now and read, but I just want to take a moment here. And also the website this week, we haven't had a review rundown, but we've done a couple of coming soon and now playing and are now funding. So kind of a glimpse of the future and the active happy present, which is a feature set that I'm really happy to do. Oh, Medium. I got to get us off Medium, because every time I click on something in Medium, it's like, oh, join Medium. And it's like, I hope no one joins Medium thinking they're helping us out. Oh God, do you think that's what happened? Anyway, here's who we got. We've got Coin and Ghost, HRS Cherry Poppins, Catnip, Last Call Theater, The Queen's Fools, Rogue Artists Ensemble, The Speakeasy Society, and Spy Brunch. Just a plethora of incredible companies from around Los Angeles, many of whom have specialties in immersive and a few who don't, which is equally exciting to see what happens when theater companies who don't specialize in immersive are challenged to come and make. We're really, really, really excited about it. It's the most fun we have all year. Every year we do it, which is why we need to do it every year. We've been doing it every other year. I mean, you all know why. The pandemic. So there we go. Let's see what else. Oh, and of course, Siobhan's world premiere. It wound up being the world premiere of the movie. We're doing that at 2-Bit Circus. We're setting up a special thing, and I'm going to say this, even though we haven't locked it down. One of the ideas is that we're going to be selling a tier of ticket to that, where folks get to then go play either Dr. Botchers at 2-Bit with Siobhan. She's never played Dr. Botchers, or Space Squad with me. And I haven't gotten to play the final version of Space Squad. And that'll be part of the shenanigans that happen after the screening and after the Q&A. Because we're at 2-Bit Circus and we can do stuff like that and run around and play. It's going to be quite the fun. And this sort of takes the slot of the quarterly meetup for Los Angeles. That's the other side of it. All of which we'll be hyping up more in the weeks to come as we get around to that. All right. Well, I have a lot of chores I got to go do, and I got to make the newsletter so I can get that together before I head out this afternoon to go have something like a Friday before getting up at 6:30 in the morning and driving down to San Diego tomorrow. So I'm going to go, and I'll leave you with this. The associate producer of No Proscenium is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. This podcast is written, edited, hosted, produced, and mixed by yours truly. I mean, it's all my fault. I'm Noah Nelson, and until next time, I'll see you at the show.